What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here for our end of the month grading breakdown by our good buddy Gemrate. Gemrate does a daily breakdown, weekly breakdown, all sorts of grading breakdowns. 100% amazing website and data tool that he offers. At the end of every month, he does a nice little recap of what the various grading companies did throughout the previous month. He currently looks at PSA, SGC, and BGS. And it looks like CSG is going to be added into the mix starting next month. I see they popped up on the items graded by week report. And since they now have a public population report, we will get good grading data on all four of the major companies. The overall numbers pretty much stayed steady. PSA down 3% on the month, SGC up 1%, BGS up 5%. A couple things to consider here. I believe PSA took a day for the holiday, for President's Day, which if you look at their weekly, that did hold them down a little bit compared to most other weeks. Gemrate does note here, even though they were down 3%, and that is also considering that February is a shorter month, the daily average volume was up 7%, and they did set a record for weekly volume with 235,000 graded cards the week of Valentine's Day. So, even though this shows that they were slowing slightly, it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. But regardless, all three companies are cranking on cards. Once again, the interesting thing to me here is the fact that SGC is cranking out more cards per month than BGS. BGS has stated that they are going to clear their backlog at the end of May, at least according to the statement they put out this week. We did the video a couple days ago on that. SGC essentially has no backlog. They're humming on all cylinders with no major backlog, turning stuff around in about 20 to 30 real life days. Not business days, about a month or less. The last order I did, I got back in right about 3 to 4 weeks, I believe. And I just sent another order off about a week ago of some more 89 McFarlane cards, so I'll see how long those take. I still haven't posted the submission preview video for that. I recorded it and then got caught up with the Atlanta stuff and haven't had a chance to even post that video yet, so maybe I'll throw that up on Saturday. And PSA obviously has a backlog. I listened to the PSA podcast this week. They say they are just above 5 million cards remaining in the backlog. So they are on track to clear that sometime late summer, I believe, is what they've essentially been stating. With them hitting almost 800,000 cards a month, 750,000 last month with the shorter month. But they're basically closing in on 800,000 cards a month, with 20% of that devoted to current orders or new orders, and 80% of that devoted towards the backlog. So they are making hay on that. I continue to state this data, while interesting now, becomes super interesting later in this year when, if Beckett has cleared their backlog, SGC has no backlog, and PSA clears their backlog, along with CSG, we will begin to see exactly what the demand is for these card services. Right now, SGC is the only one we know for sure. They're doing 82,000 cards a month, so that gives us an idea what their demand is for that, for grading with them anyway. BGS is 64,000 a month, but what happens when the backlog's gone? Same question for PSA. When the 5 million card backlog disappears or gets low, what happens to that number? We know what they can do. We know what Beckett can do. We're going to start having this data. If you look down here, the items graded by week, you could see SGC and BGS are very consistent in regards to how much they do per week. Those lines are very flat. They don't spike up and down all around. So we know exactly what they could do when they're working at full capacity. And you have to assume, maybe not so much with SGC, but BGS is working at max capacity to try to clear the backlog. If they clear their backlog and all of a sudden this number drops, say in the month of June from 64,000 to 20,000, 15,000, 10,000, whatever it goes to, that will give you a very good idea of what they're cranking out, what the demand is for their grading services versus what their capacity is. because we now have a good idea of what these companies can crank. We know SGC could do 80 some thousand cards a month. If that number starts to drop off, we'll know potentially that demand is decreasing for SGC services. Or if it begins to increase, we'll know, hey, they've upped capacity even further and demand is still strong for that. And then the same can be said for PSA. When we get to the fall of this year or late summer and that backlog is mostly gone, what does that 800K number look like? I'm just rounding up to 800K on the shorter month. Does that number start to dip? If all of a sudden PSA is doing 500,000 cards a month, we know people aren't grading as much anymore. That being said, if the number stays strong and steady, once they fully open up the gates, because remember, PSA is not fully reopened. On this list, SGC is the only one that is 100% fully open, send us everything. BGS is just starting to get back to that point. PSA has been starting to slowly open the floodgates, just ever so slowly letting cards come back into the building. So this data is very interesting now to set those baselines for when we get to the summer and we have a much better idea of what these companies are actually doing. And this is going to be very insightful for the demand for their services versus what their outputs are, since we now have these baselines. That's the part of this that I find extremely interesting. As we've talked about a lot, PSA is the elephant in the room. When they clear the backlog, what are they going to price at to continue to grade? You have to assume they want to keep grading 800,000 cards a month, if not more. They probably want that number to be higher. When you don't have 5 million cards sitting in a warehouse behind you, when you're basically running, with little backlog, there'll always be a little buffer there. But when you're basically running with zero backlog and they say, okay, open the taps, bring the bulk orders back in again. If that number nosedives, we're going to know, the PSA is not getting the demand that they once had when they don't have the backlog behind them. That being said, if it stays steady and, that number stays, say they're still doing 800,000 a month, and they say backlog is basically clear, hit us with your best shot, hobby, and we hit them and they stay at that 800,000 number or whatever the number is by the time we get to the summer, that's a sign that the demand is still there at extremely high level for grading. So I find all this stuff extremely interesting. Going to take a quick peek down here. February Gemrate data looks pretty much the same. Beckett's is the highest at 70%. SGC at 41%, PSA at 57%. Once again, we have beat this horse to death. These numbers are extremely skewed based off the grading scales. PSA just has a PSA 10 for their Gem Mint grade. SGC has an SGC 10 and an SGC 9.5. It gives their graders more choices to choose from. Beckett has the subgrades to work with, which allows them a little bit of wiggle room because you got the Min Gem, the True Gem, Min Gem Plus, and all the other little bags of tricks that they have that can slip a card into being, air quotes, a BGS 9.5 Gem Mint, even if it is a Min Gem, which in some of the other companies, SGC, would probably be an SGC 9.5, and in PSA could flip either way. It could just as easily be a PSA 9 or be a PSA 10, depending on the grading, because grading is subjective. The other interesting thing, which maintains, is percentage of items graded for each era. Beckett does the worst on the ultra modern just because they haven't really been open and there's really not much of a reason to use Beckett outside of just a few specific cards. PSA stays steady and SGC also stays steady. This is SGC's chart in regards to what types of categories they are grading on a given month. A couple things I want to point out here. Really the main thing. Look at the jump in non-sports cards. A 30% increase in non-sports cards in SGC. I wonder what all those non-sports cards are. I bet they might have Spider-Man and X-Men and Wolverine and some other Marvel characters on them if I had to guess. The onslaught of Marvel slabs is coming. Marvel cards were never, I don't want to say never, but were not typically graded outside of a few unique cases. That is about to change. The Marvel graded market is coming, and it is coming quickly. I'm just Once again, I don't know for sure, but I bet you a large chunk of that 30% is Marvel cards. And when you flip over here, we look at PSAs. One of the interesting things is the baseball is number one with SGC by a decent portion, followed by basketball, football, soccer, and non-sport. When we flip over to PSA, scroll down here a little bit, number one is TCG, mostly Pokemon, is the dominant number one, followed by basketball, followed by baseball, soccer, hockey, non-sport. Once again, look at non-sport, though it's lower on the list, a 29% increase. Just like SGC, the Marvel slabs are a-coming, and they are coming fast. As Marvel cards continue to form their market turns into, or moves into more maturity, levels off. Grading is going to be the next evolution of the Marvel card market because it is an untapped resource on the grading side. So that is the thing that we are now about to see, is these Marvel cards coming back slabbed up. So we'll leave it at that this week, or just kind of make it kind of quick. Just a quick little recap there. I will link to Gemrate's website in the description down below. There is a lot of wonderful tools in here. I have used some of this stuff in the past. There is a whole thing up here where you can run reports, which are very handy. I use them in a lot of the Marvel videos that show you how a set has been graded over time and the increases, the gem rate percentages over time, all that sort of fun stuff. So go poke around on Gemrate's website. Like, comment, and subscribe if you are not already, and we will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.